There's this invisible war being fought like every single second of every day. And it's not happening on some far-off battlefield. It's happening in the digital world. It's this constant, relentless cat-and-mouse game between the folks trying to break in and the ones working around the clock to keep them out.
So to really get a grip on just how high the stakes are, we're not going to waste time with hypotheticals. No, we're going to dive right into a real-world breach, one that sent absolute shockwaves through the entire security world.
Now this quote, this isn't from some news report. This is the official statement from LastPass. Yup, one of the biggest password managers on the planet. And it's a pretty chilling reminder that even the companies we trust with our entire digital lives, they're prime targets too.
And we're not talking about a little bit of data here. The attackers got an absolute treasure trove of personal info. But here's the kicker, the really alarming part, they also snagged a backup copy of customer password vaults. Now, okay, those vaults were still encrypted, which is good. But all that other data, that is a goldmine for anyone looking to commit identity theft, run phishing scams, you name it.
So that really begs the question, right? When the bad guys are this good, how do we possibly fight back? I mean, it can feel like a totally impossible battle. Well, to figure that out, we first got to get inside their heads. We need to understand their playbook.
All right, so let's pull back the curtain on the attacker's world. We often call this the red team. Now, in a company, these are the good guys, the ethical hackers. But in the wild, they're the real adversaries. And the logic is simple. If you want to build a rock-solid defense, you absolutely have to learn to think like an attacker. You got to know their moves before they make them.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Meet a group called Fin6. These guys are a pretty well-known cybercrime operation, and we're not talking about some kid in a basement here. They are organized, they are methodical, and they are all about the money. Their specialty? Hitting point-of-sale systems. The cash registers and credit card machines at big stores and hotels.
So how do you even begin to understand how a group like this operates? Well, in the security world, we have a term for it, TTPs. It stands for Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. The easiest way to think about it is it's their playbook. It's the set of signature moves they use time and time again to get what they want.
And look, this isn't just chaos. There's a clear, methodical flow to it. Step 1, they've got to get a foot in the door. That's initial access. Once they're in, they go quiet. They start looking around, mapping out the network, trying to find the good stuff, the crown jewels. We call that internal reconnaissance. And finally, once they've found it, they grab that data and sneak it out. That's data exfiltration.
Okay, so to really see one of these techniques in action, let's zoom in on a specific tool they use to stay in once they've gotten access. It's called a rootkit. And a really common one is a malicious module that's built for the Apache web server, which, by the way, powers a massive chunk of the internet. So here's the play-by-play. The attacker manages to get their piece of malicious code, this module, loaded up by the web server. What that does is create a secret backdoor. Now, just by visiting a very specific hidden web address, they can send commands right to the server, totally bypassing all the normal security. It's an incredibly sneaky and persistent way for them to keep control.
Okay, so the attacker's playbook is obviously very sophisticated, and yeah, it can sound pretty bleak. But the defenders, we call them the blue team, they are not just sitting around waiting. They've got their own impressive arsenal of tools, all designed to spot and shut down these exact kinds of threats.
Let's highlight two real workhorses in the Defender's toolkit, Suricata and Wireshark. The best analogy I can give you is this. Suricata is like your home's alarm system. It's on 24/7, watching in real time. Wireshark, on the other hand, is the forensic kit the investigators bring in after the alarm goes off, to dust for fingerprints and figure out exactly what went down.
So Suricata, it just sits there on the network, watching everything. It inspects every single piece of data that comes in or goes out. And it has this massive rule book that describes what bad stuff looks like. So if a piece of traffic matches one of those rules, like, say, the signature of that Apache rootkit we talked about, bam, it raises a big, loud alert.
Now, as soon as that alarm from Suricata goes off, or even worse if a breach is discovered way after the fact, that's when the incident responders roll in with Wireshark. This tool is incredible. It lets them take all that network traffic and put it under a microscope, dissecting it packet by packet to basically reconstruct the attacker's every single move.
And a typical investigation has a pretty clear flow. The analysts grab all the recorded network traffic, they decrypt it so they can actually read it, and then the hunt begins. They can filter through everything to find, say, a suspicious file being downloaded, pull that malware out to analyze it, and eventually trace the whole thing back to the attacker's command and control server. It is pure digital detective work.
So we've got the attackers trying to get in and the defenders trying to spot them. But, just waiting for an attack to happen, that's a purely reactive game. The best defenders, they go on the offensive. They actually test their own systems.
And this leads to the most critical question for any security team out there. Sure, your alarm system might look great on paper, but will it actually go off when a sophisticated crew like Fin 6 comes knocking? How can you really be sure?
The answer is you run a fire drill. In the cyber world, this is called adversary emulation. Basically, the blue team puts on the red team's hat for a day. They run the exact same plays, the same TTPs that a real attacker would use, but they do it in a safe, controlled way. The whole point is to see if their own alarms go off and if the response plan actually works.
Okay, now there's a small but really important distinction here. Adversary emulation is all about precision. It's about perfectly mimicking one specific attacker, like Fin 6. Think of it as a sniper rifle aimed at one specific threat. Adversary simulation, on the other hand, is broader. It's about mixing and matching techniques from lots of different attackers to test for a wider range of possibilities. That's more like a shotgun, trying to cover a bigger area.
And this whole process isn't a one-and-done kind of deal. Not at all. It's a constant cycle of improvement. You test a technique, you see what you missed, you fix the gap in your defenses, and then you do it all over again. Every single time you go through that loop, the whole organization gets a little bit stronger, a little more resilient.
So, when you pull the camera back and look at the whole picture, you realize this isn't a problem with some simple, easy solution. It's a dynamic, ongoing struggle. It really is a never-ending watch.
And this really brings us to the fundamental truth about cybersecurity. It's not a product you can just go out and buy. It's not a destination you can arrive at. There is no finish line. It's a process, a constant, never-ending cycle of adapting and responding.
So really, it all boils down to this. The attackers are constantly evolving. So the defenders have to evolve even faster. And being proactive, doing things like adversary emulation, is pretty much the only way to have a fighting chance of getting ahead. And maybe, just maybe, turning this cat-and-mouse game into a race where the defenders can actually take the lead.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? From massive corporations all the way down to our own personal accounts, our digital lives are locked away in these vaults. So, after seeing this constant back-and-forth battle, the question that we should all probably be asking ourselves is, do you really know who holds the key?